Hey guys, welcome back. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year coming up. This will be my predictions video for the UFC 195 main card. If you didn't watch my prelim predictions for UFC 195, at the beginning of that video I said that from now on, starting with this card and into the new year, I'm going to be doing my predictions for each event in two separate videos, one for the prelim card, one for the main card, just in an attempt to help grow my channel, to get more views, to make it easier for you guys to view the videos. I'll also be including timestamps in the description, and this was suggested to me by one of my viewers, and I can't remember his channel name, but he makes videos, so I'll give him a plug and put his link in the description as well. And you can check out my video where I posted my final ranking on UFC Fantasy for the year. For 2015, I finished at 348 overall. I was happy about that. Second year in a row that I finished in the top 500. So check that video out. I also go over the results of my picks for Dos Santos versus Cerrone. And follow me on Twitter, link in the description. I always live tweet during fights. Always post my predictions on UFC Fantasy and my ranking after each event, so go follow me on there. Alright, UFC 195, I won't give the full explanation that I did in my prelim predictions video, but not excited for this card, really. Still an awesome main and co-main event. You have Poirier and Duffy, which I absolutely hate that it's on Fight Pass, but that's still a great fight. But it's just way too soon after this massive 2 weeks that we've had in the UFC with the 3-event weekend leading up to 194. McGregor's 13-second KO over Aldo, and then last weekend's RDA versus Cerrone event. This is just trying to squeeze another big event right after that last week. It's just way too much. There's no time to get excited for it, but those are just my opinions, and we're just doing the 5 fights on the main card. So starting off at lightweight, Abel Trujillo versus Tony Sims. Have to go with Trujillo here. He should have the grappling, the wrestling edge. He should be more physical, have a strength advantage. Tony Sims, I liked his knockout win in his debut over what's his name? Creepy Steve Montgomery. Got tagged early in that fight with a knee, but came right back with a big, I think it was overhand, and knocked him out. So I like that, and I picked him to win his last fight against Aubin Mercier, but just got badly out-grappled, really got exposed. Every time he was on the feet, he would make it a little bit interesting, offer some resistance, but couldn't stop the takedown, and then on the ground, did not do a good job of getting back to his feet. And that's where I think Trujillo is going to expose him here. And Trujillo has definitely, had his problems, his own problems grappling. Nurmagomedov really dominated him. Tebow just beat him, took him down, and stopped controversially, but got the chokehold on him. And has a big cardio problem as well. After starting really strong against Ferguson, dropping him early in that fight, just completely fell apart, completely gassed, and got submitted. And then his fight against Jamie Varner, I thought you really saw a big skill gap there early in that fight, where Varner had the much more accurate striking, was piecing him up, and also almost got submitted in a north-south chokehold before he eventually landed the kind of the Hail Mary knockout. So Trujillo, I think his skill level is still not too high if he's not able to rely on his wrestling, but seeing how Sims really struggled with that against Mercier, I have to go with Trujillo to get the win here. And by the way, I think this is just a complete joke as a pay-per-view fight. Even the opener, both guys coming off of losses. This is pretty cheap here, so I have to call the UFC out on that one. But going with Trujillo, I think by decision. All right, next up at featherweight, Diego Brandao versus Brian Ortega. This should be a fun fight. I'm really excited about Ortega. Brandao, I'm not sure where he's at. As taking some bad losses to McGregor, Poirier, even Darren Elkins over the years. And he's a very skilled guy. We've seen he can be really slick, very dominant on the ground, and even on the feet. Has some good combinations, has some fight-ending power, but does not put it all together. He fades in fights, and that's why I think Ortega is going to pull through here. Technically, Brandao, I think, could have the advantage on the ground, could have an advantage with the takedowns, but Ortega seems really effective with his grappling game. Against Tavares last time out, was on his back for most of that fight, getting beaten up, eating some elbows on the ground, and on the feet was losing as well, but hung in there, was super tough, took a bunch of damage, but in that third round, I think he dropped Tavares, and then I think he got Mount and finished him off with brutal ground and pound. So Ortega's super tough. Brandao, we've seen him fade. The Daniel Pineda fight started off strong, but at the end of I think 2 rounds there, at the end of the round, he'd get put in mount and started to get pounded on. And he can't make those mistakes here against Ortega. He will get finished if he lets that happen. And Ortega, I think, is a much higher level grappler than Pineda, so I have to go with Ortega here on the feet. Brandao should have an advantage, but going with Ortega. Brandao's last fight against Jimmy Hedis, he looked good. He looked like he had the clear advantage on the feet and grappling, but Ortega's a real tough guy. He can take a shot, and if Brandao starts to fade, or I think Ortega's really going to capitalize, get him in mount or on a bad position in the ground and finish him off. So going with Ortega. Next up at welterweight, Albert Tumenov versus Lorenz Larkin. This is a good matchup. Both guys are really on a roll right now. I just don't think it's quite a pay-per-view level fight yet. But Tumanov, if you switch this fight with the Poirier-Duffy fight, I'd be happy. You still get a great Fight Pass headliner there. 2 up-and-coming guys, but to have this on the main card instead of Poirier-Duffy, that to me is really silly. But Tumenov versus Larkin, both guys are really surging right now. I feel like Larkin will have the speed advantage. Since dropping to welterweight, he's really been reborn. His speed looked incredible against John Howard, lighting him up early and getting the knockout. And then against Ponzinibbio in his last fight, I was really impressed with that finish, because Ponzinibbio, is not, he wasn't an over-the-hill guy like Howard, and he's a guy who's very dangerous with his power himself. We just saw that with his win over Andreas Stahl. But Lorenz Larkin, he's bided his time, picked his moment to attack, and once he let his hands go, that was it. Hurt Ponzinibbio and put him away. So very impressed with Larkin. Tumanov, though, even though I think he'll be at a speed disadvantage here, technically this guy just finds the openings. He's very sneaky. That uppercut that he caught Joban with in his last fight, just snuck it in there. Very, he's very clever and crafty with that. So I think Tumanov has the technical advantage. He has the much more credentialed striking background, and I think that's why he's gonna get the win here. Tumanov, we've seen him struggle on the ground. Lorenz Larkin as well, but I think Larkin might have the takedown advantage here if he wants to go that route, but I think both guys are going to want to bang it out. And while Larkin has the speed advantage, Tumanov has big power. We saw him just completely clown Matt Dwyer in their fight, and then was Anthony Lapsley, these guys who are just have the lower level striking, he gets out of there. And even Joe Ban, who was a higher level fighter. Lorenz Larkin is definitely going to be his toughest test, but I think Tumanov just has that technical edge in the striking, so I'm going to go with Tumanov. All right, on to the co-main event at heavyweight, Stipe Miocic versus Andrei Arlovski. Great matchup, great Co-main event, I will say, I think Mir got robbed completely in his last fight against Arlovski. I think without question he won that fight. But anyways, Miocic and Arlovski. If this fight stayed on the feet, I would heavily favor Arlovski. Miocic, while he has good fundamental boxing, technically he seems to have a solid foundation. He can use a jab, and he uses movement well on the feet. Against Roy Nelson, he would stick and move, land his jab, get out of the way of the power hand of Roy Nelson. While he has solid boxing, he doesn't really have huge power. Of course, against Maldonado coming up from light heavyweight, he just clowned him. But against other heavyweights, hasn't really shown that fight-ending power. Even against Gonzaga, who he had hurt and hobbled in that fight, he was really unwilling to let his hands go and do anything to work towards a finish. So I would heavily favor Arlovski if this fight stayed on the feet. I had completely written Arlovski off coming into the UFC, but very impressive wins over Travis Brown and over Bigfoot. Showed some real good timing and accuracy in his striking there. His chin, I think, is still suspect with the knockouts he's suffered in the past, and also against Brown, he got dropped but recovered. So there's always that chance he could get tagged. And I also thought he was losing the striking battle to Frank Mir. I thought Mir didn't land the harder strikes, but did land more strikes against him. So, anyways, I think it's chin suspect, but I still think Arlovski would have the big advantage if this stayed on the feet. Miocic, he hits hard, but still, has a knockout loss to Stefan Struve, and then his fight against Junior Dos Santos. While he hurt Dos Santos early on the feet in that fight, he still took a bunch of shots and took big damage in that fight. But if Frank Mir was able to take down Arlovski, land some clean takedowns on him, Miocic should be able to all day. Frank Mir, throughout his career is not, a top level wrestler in the heavyweight division. The only other performance where he really out wrestled a guy, a top guy, was against Roy Nelson, and that was not the takedowns didn't look great in that fight. It's mostly ankle picks and single legs. So I think Miocic will have the wrestling advantage here. Against Hunt, he had no problem, just going to the takedown over and over. He, did not want to mess around on the feet. So I think that's a big advantage for him here. Again, stays on the feet. Got to favor Arlovski, but Miocic had that great game plan against Hunt, had relentless ground and pound. And I got to take him here against Arlovski because of the wrestling. He seems to game plan great for guys. He did the cane approach against Dos Santos. It almost worked out for him. But I think he's fighting smart now. Really like the performance over Hunt. And given that Arlovski, his wrestling didn't look good against Mir, I think Miocic will have not too hard a time getting him down. So going with Miocic. All right, now the main event at welterweight for the belt, Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit. Great matchup. Should be a very fun, action-packed fight. I have to go with Lawler, but Carlos Condit, even though he had that layoff, he had the leg injury against Woodley, and even though the guy suffered setbacks against Hendricks, GSP, I thought in that Alves fight, even though he looked bad in the first round, was eating a ton of leg kicks, couldn't find his rhythm on the feet. That second round, he exploded, and I think it was a spinning back fist or back elbow that he landed against Alves that hurt him, and he put him down and jumped on him for the finish. Condit is still a technical striker, gets stronger as the fight goes on. He could capitalize on an opening like he did against GSP. And then against Hendricks, showed a great defensive guard. Not only defensive, but Hendricks just couldn't get any ground and pound off, and he had to get back to his feet after he took him down because Condit was threatening with Kimuras and completely tied him up on the ground. So very threatening off of his back, and has on the feet, of course, we all know how dangerous he can be there. I always think of the second Martin Kampmann fight, whereas the fight went on, he just landed more and more shots, and the finishing sequence, he just unloaded, a bunch of spinning attacks and put all his strikes together to really finish off Kampmann and technically picked him apart throughout that fight. But Lawler, that last performance against McDonald, he just looked incredible. I had never seen strikes, just basic 1-2 combinations look so, laser sharp and accurate that I can remember in the UFC. Definitely had his fair share of, struggles in that fight, especially when I think it was in the third or fourth round. McDonald landed the head kick that wobbled him and started to tee off on him against the cage. But Lawler hung in there. He seemed like he really refined his striking, made a big improvement since his Hendricks fights, where he's just kind of going out there brawling and throwing the kitchen sink at Hendricks, trying to get him out of there early in that fight. But, even in the first and second Hendricks fight, we saw Lawler kind of freeze up a bit, get hesitant when Hendricks started to settle down and work his boxing combinations. In the McDonald fight, Lawler, was really a lot more effective with those very accurate 1-2 strikes straight down the middle, and that's eventually what he was able to end the fight with. So I thought Lawler looked great, made some huge improvements. And Condit, we've seen him kind of a guy who can just run straight at and push him back. We've seen him struggle on the feet against those guys. Johnny Hendricks in their fight was just throwing that left hand haymaker over and over, was able to run him back. And then also in the Tyron Woodley fight, out of the gate, Woodley jumped on him, was throwing big haymakers, and kind of threw Condit off his game. So I think Lawler will be able to use the forward pressure, come forward, and land those really accurate strikes we saw from him in the McDonald fight. But Condit, most of the time when he's lost, like to GSP Hendricks, he's had to worry about the takedown. Also against Woodley, Lawler, not a bad takedown guy. He actually seems to be really good at getting back up to his feet. We saw that in the Ellenberger fight, but takedown guy, that's not really his game, even if he has it. So I don't see him taking that approach against Condit. I think both guys are going to stand in the middle and trade, and there I just think Lawler has the forward pressure, seems to have really refined his striking. I think he hits a bit harder than Condit, has the more devastating one-shot KO power. Condit's more of a death by accumulation kind of guy, like he did to Kampmann. And if Lawler fades for whatever reason, I could see Condit taking over as the fight goes on. Condit is still able to, land one big shot to hurt you, like the spinning attack he did against Alves. But I think the wiser pick here is Lawler, and I think it's going to go all 5 rounds. And I think Lawler's just tougher. I mean, I don't think either guy's going down here, but Lawler can take insane amount of damage. That first Hendricks fight, both guys just were wailing away at each other. And Condit, he wants to be more technical than that. So if Lawler presses the action, I can see him not giving Condit that space and pushing him back for the whole fight. So a bit of a long-winded prediction there, but I'm going to go with Lawler. I'm going to say decision. I think it's going to be a really fun fight. All right, guys. Well, those are my predictions for the UFC 195 Lawler versus Condit main card. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out my predictions for the prelim portion of this card. And follow me on Twitter. Stay tuned. I got my predictions coming for the other 2 events in this month. Dillashaw versus Cruz, and then Johnson versus Bader at the end of the month. All right, guys. Thank you. Take care. Have a happy new year, and I'll see you next time. Bye.